PodCAP is brought to you by Smogon.com, where right now you can apply to be a topic leader or on the topic leadership team for CAP 28. If you're interested, just go to the CAP subforum on Smogon.com and apply today. Signups are only open until July 31st, that's this Friday, so get your application in today. And by the CAP Discord server. Right now there's a CAP art contest to create CAP Gajinkas. If you're interested in that, drop your art down in the chat, only at the CAP Discord server. And by the Galactic Astrolotls, who, you know, aren't the choice band Revenants, but that doesn't mean that they can't beat them. Yeah. Thank you, and enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome back for another exciting PodCAP. I'm joined today by the tournament director for CAP Premier League 6. I almost said CAP Team Tournament 6. LucarioofLegends, welcome back to PodCAP.
Hello, it's me again. Don't get too excited. And actually, in fact, for our lovely host Voltage is in fact also the team captain of the Galactic Astrolotls in this CAP Premier League number 6 as well.
Yes, I am. Yeah, thank you for letting the listeners know. For those of you who might not know, I'm Voltage, and as Luke said, I am the captain of the Galactic Astrolotls, who, you know, tied their first week, but it was a very good week, I feel like. But
it was a very interesting week. It was a very interesting week for sure.
Very haxy week. Very haxy week.
Very.
Anyway, so I figure for those of you who are listening, we're going to talk today a little bit about the CAP Premier League as a whole, with regards to how it's like being a captain, a tournament director, the draft, and then also week 1. So if that's something you're interested in listening to, stick around, drop a like, don't forget to subscribe. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to leave a comment in the chat down below, or the comment section down below. I don't really know what I'm talking about these days. But, why don't we get started here with you, Luke? So in the past, this tournament has been managed by Drapion Swing, however you pronounce his name.
Drapion Swing,
but he's not around this year, so yeah, so you picked up the slack. What kind of was that process of getting into the tournament directing scene?
So, previous CAP Premier League's formerly CAP team tournament so for the first couple, they were done by a previous moderator, Heel and Deal, and he did a great job of them. And then in CAP TT5, Heel had left by that point, so Drapion Swing jumped in. And then for this CAP T6, Offler announced on the Discord that, hey, they were looking for hosts. And I don't have any actual big tournament experience hosting-wise. I think I've done exactly one small tournament for CAP that fully went through, and then I flaked on another. I'll fully admit it. But I kind of just, ever since I saw Drap do it, I've always had an interest in hosting CAP TT and now CAPPL. So I pretty much went into Offler's DMs and said, hey, I'm interested in hosting, and he said, cool, don't John, and let me in. So, you know, that's pretty much how the process went.
And it's nice, too, I would imagine, just CAPPL is kind of I wouldn't say it's low stakes, but it's definitely one of those, it's not like it's World Cup. It's not like it's SPL. It's not OUPL by any means. So there's definitely room for a little, you know, if a learning experience, this is a great one to sort of start off with. So.
Certainly, and a lot of time in CAP, it's always just been a lot of learning experience for me. Like, even if I look back at my first time as TLT in Pajantum, how I did in 27 versus 23 is night and day for me.
And it's one of those things, I think a lot of the process here, this CAP Premier League CAPPL, it's sort of like the name is new and there's a lot of new talent on the scene as well. This is the first tournament that I've been a manager for, actually, so I'm also doing my best to learn and grow and figure out what's good and how to lead a successful team and whatnot. So,
very much.
Before we... Yeah, and I would say at this point, you know, you're doing a very nice job with it so far. So thank you for, first of all, being there to just do it, you know?
Yeah, thank you so much for the compliment.
Yeah. Have there been any sort of interesting things that have happened within the start of signups to the end of the first week that have been sort of interesting for you as a tournament director that you might have not quite realized that tournament directors have to deal with?
I think a lot of it is that like usually I'm a lot more of a relaxed person, so that kind of reflects in my previous host experience. But kind of like there's a lot people are turning to me for a lot of things. Like I had a question from the I believe it was the Pinecos at one point asking if this was if a certain thing was Johning it, and like I genuinely didn't know, so I had to ask Offler about it. But it's kind of interesting. People are turning to me to all of these questions, and it's kind of a very new experience because it's helped building it up for me.
Yeah, you are the leader now.
I am.
You
I
are
am the
voice.
Senate.
You
I
are
am
the
the.
commanding voice.
I am the manager. Except
Yeah.
actually, you're the manager, but I'm like the host.
I am the law.
I am mayor. I am law.
What I say goes. Yeah, I would say it's interesting. For those who aren't quite sure of the teams, let me actually run through them really quickly since you alluded to it. There's the Jumbo Jumbows, which are coached by Burkle and Finchinator, or Fink. There's the Choice Band Revenants, which are coached by CB, Reven, and MX. There's the Surging Snailstroms, which have no fun, and they're Joe and Jordy, or Offler, as you may know Joe as. There's the Galactic Astrolotls, which is my team, managed by me, and then my ass man is Snake Radler. Ass man being assistant manager. There's the Perilous Pinecos, managed by Agena and Marjane. And then there's the Punny Private Hikes, which are managed by Felucia and Nalay. So when you hear us alluding to those teams, you might have that in the back of your mind that the Surging Snailstroms are tryhard and have no fun, and the Galactic Astrolotls are the best team there. So,
I
with that said,
I can confirm that first fact. They only care about winning and likes on their posts. That is all they care about.
oh my god, I won't get into it, but you know, Joe and Jordy. Actually, you know what? We can talk about the draft a little bit since that's kind of the next thing on the plate. But with Joe and Jordy, their whole draft plan was literally just bid upwards of 40,000 on Stresh, which I think is really funny.
And honestly,
they say that jokingly, but I doubt it.
I doubt it too. And honestly, 23 for Stresh is equivalent to highway robbery genuinely, because Stresh is a fantastic player.
Yeah. So before we get too much into the draft process, let me sort of back up and explain, how much money we had and what that whole thing was. So the captains, at the start of the draft, everyone had 100,000 money, basically, right? So I'll just refer to them as like their numbers. And they went in and they started with 100,000 for everyone. All the managers paid 12.5 for themselves to play if they wanted to be able to play on their own team. And I think everyone paid for themselves. Yeah, that's new, which isn't a bad thing. I think I was a little surprised that CB paid for himself to play, but that's something. So that brought us down to 87.5. And then Assmans, in the past, some team tours have had them be fixed rate, but then some teams might use that as like a free first round pick at a fixed rate of a pretty low price, where otherwise that player might have gone for a lot more. So the managers, in this case, with the help of Luke, were able to sort of pick their Assmans, but they had to agree on the price to pay for them. So, for example, I paid, I believe it was 22K for Snake. Jordy went for 25K. MX also went for 22. Finch went for 20, and Margine and Nalay went for 15. And after that, the teams then had the remaining amount of money to spend on players from a draft pool.
Yeah, and we haven't done the manager payment in previous team tournaments, but this mostly came up as an issue where last tournament, mostly the Sizzling Smokemotos, not to call anyone out.
Jordy.
Yeah, Jordy. Kind of, had the
We love you,
power
Jordy.
duo of Jordy and Stresh, and for a much lower price, pretty much just by having them as the ass manager and themselves as the captain. So that's kind of a measure to kind of counteract that. But I think there were certainly some winners and losers in this draft, even despite that.
Oh my god. And we can talk about that too, but like so the average starting price was around 65k or 60, it was ranging between about 62k and 68k, more or less. 6800, excuse me. No, it was 68k. I'm right. So anyway, from there, for those of you, again, who might not be totally familiar with the draft process, basically there's a pool and there's an order of ways in which the teams nominate players and then the teams bid on players. So it's not like just a schoolyard pick'em where it's like, oh, I want this character. Oh, I want that character. No, you have to nominate a player and then continuously upbid in increments of 500 to get your players. So it can get to be a little interesting when it comes to upbidding and trying to make people pay more for characters they might not want or do want, or people getting stuck with certain characters. So there is that. And so we can, why don't we talk a bit about the draft? Luke, when you were moderating that, were there any parts of it that you thought were kind of fun or interesting or exciting to watch?
Overall, that day was not. Kind of just going into a real quick IRL thing because it's pseudo relevant.
Sure.
That day was not fun for me specifically because I was working an opening shift on my phone during the draft.
Oh God.
Which led to a lot of the issues with getting everything after the draft done. But overall, I think draft kind of went how I expected. You didn't get any like super surprise picks except for one, which of course from the Pineco's.
Let's talk about that maybe a bit.
The one who needs no introduction. Snorlax in the way.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Literally the first PodCAP that's hosted by Zeph has like Viper and Offler talking about the Sunkerns and Snorlax in the way and his antics on the Sunkerns. And here come the Pineco's, like a mid-draft pick too. This wasn't even like a late draft pick. This was like in the heat of things. They just dropped 3K on Snorlax in the way.
And everyone in chat spammed .overpay.
I definitely did that too. I am, I chat with Snore. I let Snore hang out in my server because he's not been too much of a nuisance, but I don't know necessarily how well he plays as a team player, especially because apparently he dropped out when he was tilted. So that's why. In any case, but the Pineco's, I think we can start with sort of looking at the Pineco's draft a bit. It's Agena, Marjane, Layson, RSQ, Rage Spam Quit, Maroon, Snore, Shunosaurus Lee, Pip, Maxwheel, and D to the W, or Death to the West.
Yes, that is their draft. And in general, I think it's a pretty solid-ish draft. I think like they stuck to mostly like cat players. I think Lawson is like the big one that was a really good pick. Maroon as well. Maroon was truly hacked out of a game week 1. So
yes.
Yes. We'll get to that later though. And then you have some slower picks like Pip, Maxwell, and then D to the W. But it's a pretty solidly okay good draft. I think it's much weaker when looking at
some of the other teams.
Certainly looking at some of the other teams. But I think it's a very solidly built team for what they picked.
Yeah, it seems like they have a lot of mid-ground players who are, very good at just like playing, but they don't necessarily have any big names. I think the closest one maybe is RSQ, but that's
RSQ
kind of
is
Layson
like
last year did really good. But you were saying.
And RSQ is like well known in Cap. I'm not sure about his performance outside of others. but I haven't heard as much about it, especially compared to like Stresh, Andy Boy, Qzio, Neomon.
DLC.
Yeah, DLC, Jordan, Hone confirmed. All of those.
Yeah, like Martha and Lid
Mm-hmm.
and Rabia. Yeah, all of them are just sort of. The Pinecos seem to have a very cap specialized team, more or less, especially because of their picks with like Shuno and Pip as well, I'd say. Who are,
Yeah,
they're respectable battlers. They're just not really well known outside of Cap that much, I don't think.
yeah. And like, no disrespect to Cap players, but Cap players, I think, doesn't necessarily make you a good pick for
In
Cap
the grand scheme of
in
things.
the grand scheme of Cap PL.
Yeah. I will say Layson is a really good builder, and I think Marjane and again are also very solid builders, I feel like. So they do have
some
their
good
core
builders.
there. Yeah. So they do have that core, and I think it's just a matter of they don't have any huge names, but they're all solid picks. I think in the grand scheme of things, this team, um, in another draft or in a draft that was maybe a little bit more dispersed with their really good players, this team would be a solid like dark horse team. But with the remaining teams, or there's one other team that I think is like not super great, but the Pinecos I think are going to have a lot of trouble finding a spot in the postseason, and that's just
Yeah.
trying to be as unbiased as I can here. I just don't think that they'll be able to overcome some of the bigger name teams. And as we saw this week, when they played, did they play the Revs week one?
They did play the Revenants week
Is
one.
that it?
Yes.
Yeah, and they went 1-5. That's kind of a rough way to start the season. So,
Absolutely.
for
And
for Againa's sake, yeah. Sorry, go for it.
I kind of doing the math in my head just a little bit. This I don't think it's completely accurate, but to really get in the finals, they'd have to win at least their next three, but win at least three of the next four. But realistically, to get into finals for sure, they'd have to win the next four matches, especially after
They'd
a
have to
loss
win
as
out.
big as that. And I just don't see that happening as much with this team, so they certainly have an uphill battle with this.
I would I would wholeheartedly agree. And as my friend and Marjane's my friend, so, I want them to do well, but at the same time, they are an opposing team and can't root for them. I got to root for myself. But why don't
Of
we move
course.
on to let's talk maybe about the private hikes next? Does that work
Yes,
for you?
the punny private takes, puny private takes. I'm not 100% sure.
We can call them the puny private hikes, but I'm pretty sure it's punny.
Punny private
The other
takes. All
PP
right.
team.
So their team is Felicia, Nalay, Kipper, Terracotta, Airwind, Aetherol, Innovomania, Rat with Wings, Stall Guy, but Boat was actually traded, so it's actually Mr. Dollsteak, and then Exploding Donkey. And overall, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is probably the weakest team of the draft.
I don't think that's going out on a limb here.
Yeah.
They're a fun team, but I don't think that they are going to be winning any weeks, to be honest.
Yeah, I would be surprised. I think
I might eat my words, but
you might eat your words. But yeah, watch it. But in general, I think it's mostly their lack of experience with Cap specifically, because I think they do have experience with other Premier Leagues, but they are almost completely new to Cap from what I've seen, aside from Cap 1v1, which is unfortunately not in PL this year.
yeah.
But they have a few good players. Like, I think Terracotta is good, and Rat with Wings is solidly
We'll
good.
talk about Rat with Wings.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Rat with Wings. There's some fun stuff I have from behind the scenes about that.
I don't think this team
Airwind's pretty good too.
Airwind's pretty good. He just brought a very weird team. I heard he brought LO Felstinger, which is a very questionable choice.
It's something.
Yeah. But overall, I don't feel super strongly about this team. I just don't think they have the power to really get through, especially those like high tier teams. And I
Yeah.
think they just lack solid players overall.
And I'd really agree with that too. And it was pretty clear during the draft that Felucia was more or less just upbidding people, and they didn't really know too many people in the draft in terms of who they should and shouldn't grab, which is a little unfortunate for them. But they do have some pretty good team spirit. I'm not gonna lie. They raided my stream last night.
Really?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I think at this point, Terra's a good builder, and I feel kind of like, I don't want to say I feel bad for the players on the team because it's very clear they have a good team dynamic. It's just that it's like you said. I don't think they have the big name power players, and they also, I don't know if they have necessarily the good builders either. They're sort of just a team, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're the people's champions, but
they are
truly the people's champions, but I think it is just unrealistic to expect them to actually get to finals or win the tournament. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks for sure, but I just don't think this team's going to be a winner here.
I would agree with you there. So, and I since we're sort of merging draft and week one discussion, one of the things that was interesting was Felucia was talking to me about Rat with Wings, actually. And
Really?
Maybe this is a leak, maybe it's not, but I'm gonna do this anyway. The fiasco was, and this was actually kind of discussed in the manager's Discord channel, was that Felucia tried to sub out Rat with Wings an hour after Rat had already played their match.
I saw that.
Yeah. So the context for that was that apparently Rat with Wings showed up in their Discord server twice, like signed in, said like hi, and then has not been on the Discord server since. They did not like post about anything about like when they were scheduling their match, when they were playing, nothing. And then they show up and just play miserably and just lose. So I would honestly be shocked if Rat got slated again, to be honest.
Let me actually check if he was actually slated for week 2. Let me see.
I
Private
don't
text.
think he was.
Is not slated for week 2.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a fiasco from what Felucia has alluded to with me in a discussion. And so that's one of those cases where it's just so, that's unfortunate. As a manager,
Yeah.
I'm glad that none of my players have really done that. And I hope that no one does that, because that's just rude to your team, you know? Like, you're slated and then you just show up and choke, not play well.
You show up 90 minutes late and choke as well.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, he showed up 90 minutes late. That's the other part.
Yeah, because like I've been reading the rules more and more consistently for the Premier League stuff, and it's 15 minutes. 15 minutes, and as soon as you let the team know where's your player, and if they don't know, you can kind of just call activity there. So I think they were just kind for waiting 90 minutes, and then Rat eventually showed up and completely choked.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it's almost better for the private tykes, because at least then they know this guy is unreliable and we can't slate him.
Yeah.
So, anyway, you know, it's unfortunate, but, you know, they'll learn and they'll just go from there, I guess.
Yep, that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Anywho, let's move on to...
Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Let's move to the... Oh, I was just going to say, I may be very lax about those activity things. Like, if my opponent is an hour late, I'll wait for another 5 minutes and then I'll leave. But if it's 15 minutes, I might start playing a little more hardball, if you know what I mean.
Yes. It is technically
anyway,
15 minutes.
Who do you want to discuss next?
Hey,
let's talk... No, you were saying.
Actually, let's talk about your team. Let's look at the Galactic Astrolotls.
My team.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Galactic Astrolotls. So it's me, Snake, Martha, Lid, Atha, Too Spoopy for You, Wolfinator, 72, Snafutari, LKJC, Guardy Lame, also known as Cairo, Sputnik, and Zephyr.
All right. So
what do you think about this team?
I think this is a pretty good team. I think the ties
now
a little...
pick your words carefully, because I might kick you out of this PodCAP if you say the
might.
wrong things.
You might. Giving my honest opinion, I think this is a pretty solid team. I think it lacks, like, I don't think it has like the straight oomph of like the Jumbaos or the Snailstroms, but it is certainly a well built team. And honestly, I'm surprised with how well it's built, considering this is your first role as captain.
Hmm. Yeah, Snake and I spent a lot of time figuring out who we wanted on our team. And we didn't get everyone we wanted. There were a few names that we wanted that I'll leave in mystery for now. That'll be something maybe I talk about after the tournament. But there was a lot of planning that went into who we wanted and why we wanted them. And I'm not afraid to maybe discuss a little bit about this just because in the past I interviewed other teams and their managers were pretty upfront with what they said. But Snake and I, we if you notice, we do have kind of like a set of a couple specific good pilots who maybe don't have as much cap experience, like Martha and Lid, for example.
Yeah,
And then we
certainly.
have a couple more builders who are very, very experienced with building, like Atha, Snake, a bit of Wolf and myself. Snaff. Snaff is huge.
Yeah.
We were very pleased that we got Snaff. Um, and then there were some names that, maybe hadn't gotten as much notable recognition, I guess, with like Sputnik and Spoopy and Cairo even, that they all went for pretty low, and I was very pleased about that because I really do think that those people like those are like steals in this tournament, and I'm very, very excited to show them. Even with week one Sputnik maybe not pulling out a W, they're still a phenomenal battler, and I'm very pleased that they're on my team.
Yeah, that's one of the most exciting things
Um,
about Premier League, about Cat Premier League draft, is just how many really interesting players kind of sneak under the radar and give a very good showing during the actual weeks itself, even against like big name players. You can get some real upset wins there. And that's just the really exciting thing about Cat Premier League. And yeah, your team
yeah, and that's one of
overall
the
is really
things.
good.
Yeah, I think, again, it's like you said, we've said kind of with these past few teams as well, that there's not really, the biggest name on this team is probably Atha at this point.
Yeah.
Snake and I were we wanted Atha. I mean, I think that's very clear with the way that we bid things, but, we were nominating, the strategy we had at the draft was to nominate a lot of those big name players to start, like Stresh, like QZL. I think my first nomination was QZL, or QZL was one of the first ones up there. Or something.
QZL was
And we
the
were
first draft.
dead.
He was the
Yeah,
first
okay,
draft.
so
I
then it
remember
wasn't
that.
us. It was no, we nominated Stresh first. I think is what it was. One of those, Stresh and I think Martha, and we actually got Martha. But it was one of those cases where Atha went really late in the draft compared to when we thought, so we were able to whittle down the other teams' in capital basically, so that we would have enough money to effectively outbid anyone. And that was kind of the goal there. Obviously, we didn't get some of the other huge names like some of the last three teams have, but really, I think Snake and I picked out some diamonds in the rough, and I really do believe that they can and will hold their own against the big three teams that are sort of there. We're sort of I'm not afraid to admit that we're probably the dark horse underdogs of this tournament going into week one. And the fact
Certainly
that we tied with the Jumbaos is a
phenomenal.
really, really good sign. And, we would have won this week had we not had a literal 1 in 100 chance of thing happening with 2 Zen headbutt misses.
Yeah, those two Zen headbutt misses were completely unfortunate.
Yeah, that would have given us the week right there. But, I think it's a good sign that we tied with the Jumbaos, a team a lot of people expect to be maybe the best team in the tournament.
Maybe the best team.
But yeah, and I think we can hop away from my team and move actually and talk about the Jumbaos a bit.
So, the Jumbaos, they have Burkle, Finchinator, or Finch or Fink or whatever. Fink. You have QZL. Well, they have QZL. Neomon, Rabia, Sun Miser, Boat instead of Mr. Dollstake. That was a trade. Jordan
Yep.
and Hoenn confirmed, which actually makes them one of the smaller teams. But this is a very small but very strong team.
It's a very power-dense team.
Mm-hmm. I think probably
Yeah.
the weakness...
The one...
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Probably the...
No, you go.
Okay. In my opinion, the captain not playing in this case is actually a detriment, considering I know Burkle doesn't really play as much, but
yeah.
I imagine he's a very solid builder. I imagine he's really good at planning. But overall, this team is very solid. Like, Fink as an ass manager is a very solid play, and even though he doesn't have as much cap experience, even though he can't build as often, he is a phenomenal player. So a lot of the times, if Fink is in a slot, he has a very solid chance of winning it, and I'm especially excited to see how we'll go up against the Snailstroms in later weeks.
He's got that big name kind of presence that a lot of players, when they see that they're, oh god, I have to play Fink, it's scary, and that's part of his, just ability to run through that those opponents because of intimidation.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah. I would say that the Jumbaos probably have the best battling core of any of the teams, and that includes, Joe, Jordy, Stresh, or like Heaven J, DLC, Estarossa, MX. I think the thing that's holding the Jumbaos back is that QZL is mainly their only true dedicated builder.
Yeah.
And QZL is a phenomenal builder. He puts in a lot of work. I just don't think that, aside from him, there's really any really, really solid builders.
And that's what this team truly needs, especially considering how Fink is very much dependent on the rest of the team to get him the team he needs to win.
Right. You kind of have Neomon who might be able to do that, but Rabia and Jordan and Fink, and if Burkle decides to play, they're all really good battlers, but they don't have the same level of building skills the way some people like Atha, like, like DLC and Heaven J, if I'm not being stupid here, like Stresh and Jordy and Joe have.
Yeah,
Jordy
the power core of
Team Factory.
Yeah, Team Factory of the Snailstroms. That is certainly their biggest weakness, I think. And like maybe Sun Miser might be able to put out a team or two, because I believe he does have previous cap experience. But yeah, this team lacks builders in general.
Yeah. And that's one of those things, right? When Martha playing Hoenn Confirmed was basically down to a matchup almost at that point, because it was Sun versus Balance. And it's one of those cases, I say that a lot, but that situation sort of reflects the fact that the Jumbaos are going to be bringing a lot of balance, I feel like. And maybe now that I'm saying this, they'll be like, now we have to bring a Trick Room.
Now we have to bring
I think
bulky
QZL is
offense.
best. Yeah. QZL is best at building balance. I think that's no secret, and I think QZL does it really well.
Certainly.
It's just that I don't know how much team variety they'll have. That's not a bad thing necessarily, especially if the team's really good, which it will be.
Yeah.
It'll just be predictable to face.
Yeah, I feel like in later weeks, if we're seeing a lot of balance, I feel like we'll be seeing a lot of counter teams, especially from a lot of the more clever teams, like I think the Revenonks and the Snails especially are going to capitalize upon it. And
what are you saying about my team?
well, you guys already played them.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah. So there's the Jumbaos.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think it's a safe bet that this team, despite the tie this week, they should be able to get some wins, either against the Revs or the Snails or the Pinecos and Privs. I think this is a team you could probably see in finals. I think it's a fair assessment
certainly.
to say that.
I think it is a very solid shot in finals.
Yeah. Well, let's move down the list then and talk about my old team, the Choice Band Revenonks.
Good old
once
Revs.
Again, yeah. A classic team. They've been around for a very long time, managed by CB, C-Brevin, CB Reven, MX, and then they've got Heaven J, Detroit Lolcat, DLC, Tadasuke, G-Luke, Epic Umbreon 29, I think they go by Maple, Estarossa, Killua Killing It, and Scizavire. And this team, It's really interesting.
It is so interesting.
I don't
And the thing is,
know what you think about this. Or no, you go for it. Go for it.
I feel like I want to say it's weaker. I feel like it is objectively probably weaker than obviously the Jumbows and the Snailstroms, but I just can't count it out yet. Just because I know CB has been doing this probably longer than all of the other teams here, and I feel like he's just gonna pull something out of his sleeves here. Like, that's the thing about CB is I feel like this team is weaker, but it's also mildly unpredictable, kind of.
Yeah. As someone who is on his team last year, CB is a phenomenal coach. His team has a very low floor, but an incredibly high ceiling. It is insane how much depth they have and how many experienced players they have, as well as players who are just good at being there and supporting the team and building. I think the Revs are one of those teams where CB likes to draft players he thinks he can develop into very competent battlers. And he is very good at doing that. And him and MX are going to be a scary team to play, no matter
Certainly.
what happens. We play them this week, and making the lineup for week 2 against the Revs was one of those, like, this is hard. I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, so I genuinely would not be surprised if we saw them in finals once more, considering how they have won previous team tournaments, especially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, too, as well, they have a huge amount of depth. They have flex players. They have just so many different options to go with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, in the grand scheme of things, they will be a team to absolutely watch, and especially the way that they just annihilated the Pinecos. It's going to be an interesting time
And
playing them.
Unfortunately, the Pinecos were hacked out of quite a few games. Like, obviously, the Maroon scenario happened. Was Lawson hacked out of a game? I can't 100% remember.
Yes.
I feel like it, yeah. But they were hacks out of a couple games, but still a 5-1. That is a very strong start for the Revenoks here today.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to, win a week 4-2. It's another thing to win a week 5-1.
Certainly.
So, the ledge between the two is monumentally large.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's that. But in the end, I think the Revs, they are very, very powerful, but they do have the fact that, they're big names, they're there, but they're a beatable team, just like everyone else. So, at least for me, the Astros were going into week 2 with the mindset, we have the momentum from week 1. Let's knock off their choice bands and
let's just
show them
push
that we
through.
mean business. Yeah, exactly. Let's use some fire lash on these guys.
Let's push through like a banded Galarian Darmanitan.
Ooh.
I just resurfaced
Speaking
some
of
bad memories
Galarian
there.
Darmanitan weaknesses, let's move on to the last team that we have here, the Surging Snailstroms, the champions of the CAP Team Tournament 5, now managed by Joe and Jordy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to introduce them, by all means.
Yeah, so their captain is Joe, and then their ass manager is Jordy, but also as players they have Stresh, Andy Boy, Asif, I guess, Clefable, GL Volkner, Pink Dragon Tamer, and Catalytic. And this team, holy moly. They have
9 players.
Stacked team. It is a very small team, but it is a stacked team.
If this were OMPL, they would just be winners. But this is not OMPL.
This is not OMPL.
But that doesn't change the fact. It doesn't change the fact that they all have amazing pilots, and again, they have the team factory of Joe, Stresh, Jordy.
Absolutely, that trio is formidable per se.
That's not to say that they're not
They're not immortal.
invincible. Like
They're not immortal.
They're not immortal. They are just, you have to be ready to prepare like no one's business against these guys. And they also have, Pink Dragon Tamer's good in UU. Like, Asif is good in OMs. Andy Boy's good in OMs. It's crazy just how broad their piloting skills are. The question is, can it translate to Cap? And I think with Joe and Jordy, they'll have definite skills to do so. No one on their team's a Cap main, but that I don't know if that's going to matter that much here.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much the Cap main is going to matter, especially when they have the team factory. And Joe and Jordy definitely have enough Cap experience that they know what's going on and they can inform their players of what they need to watch out for, especially.
Right.
So,
yeah,
I imagine you are terrified for week 4 against this team.
Yeah, week 4 is one of those weeks where that's kind of a turning point for a lot of playoff hopes.
Yeah, that's the make or break. So
I think. Wait, I thought we played them week 5.
You guys play them week 4. Yeah, Surging Snowstorm versus Astros. Suck. Yeah, you guys pretty much get making fun of the Privatex here. You pretty much get it free week 5. So
yeah, well, we hope at least. We
hope. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to beat the Revs and we have to beat the Pinecos because a win and a tie. Yeah. A tie week 1 is fine. I think a loss week 1 when there's only 5 weeks is rough, but
yeah,
a tie we can definitely manage.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that. Sorry, I just got distracted by my brother.
No problem.
What a fucking jerk. No, we're good. I'm going to cut that little bit out. Okay. But that's kind of all the teams we have here. And then week 1, the results were the Revs beat the Pinecos 5-1. The Snailstorms beat the Private Tykes 5-1. And the Jumbows and the Astros tied 3-3. So how do you think did that line up with expectations?
I feel like I kind of expected the Private Tykes to be slaughtered by the Snailstorms, and that is almost exactly what happened. I believe the only reason they didn't the Private Tykes didn't go 0-6 was due to a lucky crit, from what I've been told.
Who told you that?
Joe, so
that
might just be a little bit of arrogance, but 5-1 is still a very strong start for the Snailstorms. And it pretty much lines up with expectations. I was a little unsure about the Revs going up against the Pinecos, and once again, I do think the Pinecos were certainly hacked out of a lot of games last week. But 5-1, I did think it was going to go in favor of the Revs, and it did go in favor of the Revs. Should it have gone 4-2? Probably. It may have even tied. But I think the really interesting one is your team up against the Jumbows. I think the Jumbows have a very strong lineup, and it is somewhat crazy that you guys were able to tie it this week.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were expecting our matchup to be a 2-4, maybe a tie, but I think we were going into this week, a lot of people thinking that the Galactic Astrolotls would be losing the week to the Jumbows.
Certainly.
So the fact that we nearly pulled the win, I think, is surprising a lot of people.
Absolutely. And
is it surprising us? Hell no, we knew that we were going to do well, but
he lied as naturally as he breathed.
Yeah. But I think there was a lot of team morale that went into this first week showing that we mean business, and again, had Martha not missed those Zen headbutts or had Snake not missed 2 Focus Blasts in a row, this would be a very different week result for us.
Certainly. And this week in general was extremely volatile with how the hacks was going out. Crits left and right, misses all over. Genuinely, my biggest example of it was Maroon versus G-Luke, because Maroon had done a great job setting up for his shift gear stored power Magirna that week, using a Gyarados as kind of a second win con that was eventually knocked out by Urshifu. But
Yeah.
he had set up that Magirna just so like almost nothing could stop it. Actually, the only thing that could have really stopped it in hindsight was that Zera Aura Blaze Kick, and it crit, and that crit very much mattered looking at some of the counts.
Yeah.
And that is a very unfortunate loss for the Pinecos, because that could have made their week 4-2 instead of 2-4 instead of 1-5. And trust me,
Yeah, absolutely.
when it ties up, those win-losses really matter.
Yeah. I think and that the hacks was just everywhere this week. I'm hoping that in the future Showdown chills a little bit.
Hopefully the bad juju is
again,
out of the air a little bit.
Hi, this is Voltage in post-production, letting you know that it fucking didn't. Yeah, maybe Showdown also has the week 1 willies or whatever. But yeah, like, again, I'm going to talk about my team because I'm obsessed with my team. But again, had Martha been able to connect even one of the Zen headbutts, that was a win there easily because Martha played that game perfectly otherwise. You know, I was fortunate that my match didn't have a ton of hacks in it, but Snake had some hacks against Fink. But otherwise, and I know that the Snails versus the Private Tykes, Joe had his hacks that he reportedly says. So supposedly reportedly. Yeah. So there were hacks. There was hacks in every single matchup this week.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And like
so,
even looking
at that week 2.
Even looking in the Astros, like Atha versus Qziel, that last Ice Shard crit was so unfortunate. So unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was one of those where, since that's the best of 3 slot, too, that I would say QZL probably had a bit of momentum going into game 2. And I remember our Discord channel, after Athab won, was very like, oh man, that sucks. And I think it was Zephyr came in and was like, oh shit, did we lose? And he's like, no, we won, but by hacks. He's like, oh, that sucks. So
I have won, but at what cost?
You know, yeah, a win is a win, but you want to win in a cooler way than like Ice Shard crit.
Yeah.
So
crits suck, but once again, all's fair in love and Mons. So
This is Pokemon.
This is Pokemon. There's not much we can do about it.
Yeah. So why don't we sort of wrap up this last little bit with any sort of like general predictions for week 2 and what we might expect from the new matchups now, the Astros versus the Revenonks, the PP matchup, and the Snails versus the Jumbaos.
I am very excited in the most ironic way possible for the PP matchup, the Perilous Pinecos versus the Punny Private Tykes. Just because, like, I don't think these teams will be, but it's just the fun, really, really fun teams. Like, the Pinecos, they're the spiritual successors to the Sunny Side Up Sunkerns, and then the Private Tykes need no introduction in terms of their team spirit.
The People's Private Tykes.
The People's Private Tykes, certainly. It's going to be fun to watch. The very exciting matchup for the future of this, I think, is going to be the Galactic Astrolot. Actually, the Jumbaos versus the Surging Snail Trumps, because those are like the big 2, I would say, aside from the Revenonks. That matchup is huge.
Yeah. And I think the hypest match we may get out of this entire tournament is happening in the best of 3, QZL versus Stresh.
QZL versus going to be Stresh.
I mean, we thought Atha versus QZL was going to be a hype match. I think QZL Stresh is going to be just the biggest fight of the tournament, maybe.
Oh, straight up. I'd agree.
Yeah.
And
other really cool matchups.
And then we're not even getting any super bad matchups. Like, we're still getting like Finch versus Asif, Hoenn Confirmed versus Andy Boy,
Zordon versus Pink Dragon Tamer.
Oh yeah, that's a big one too. Yeah, we're just getting some real high quality matches today.
I think the only thing that would have been more hype is if it were Jordan versus Jordy. I think, and not even just by like the name, because those two have been working together a lot as well. I think had they been matched up, that would have been insane.
Crazy match.
I will say it's very sad that Layson versus Terra is not a thing this week.
Unfortunately,
I was looking forward
not.
to that. It was a fucking dodge, man. That sucks.
By a hair, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
But RSQ versus Terracotta is still going to be fun to watch. All things considered.
It will. I'm not gonna talk too much about my team because I have complete faith in my team, and we've been doing not to spook the revs, but we've been doing a lot of building and prep, consistent building and prep. So I'm especially confident in my SM slots. I think Snake and Wolf, they are really good battling together, or building, battling, testing together. They're phenomenal. And I think Wolf can absolutely manage against Heaven J. Again, I wouldn't put the players in the slate if I didn't think they had I was not completely confident with them. And that's
certainly
not to say I don't have faith in the other members of my team. It's just that, I want to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward and that I'm also giving people a chance to show their stuff.
Oh, yeah, I know quite a bit about Sun and Moon, and I just know how good Snake Rattler and Wolf were during their Sun and Moon days, and I am fully expecting some very interesting matches from both of them.
Yeah. So there's that. And then the funny little thing from my end too is that my birthday is actually on Saturday, the 25th. And my teammates started scheduling their matches for Saturday. And I posted after Wolf scheduled his match on Saturday, this is gonna be the weirdest birthday present I'm ever gonna get from my team is a W.
But
and
hopefully,
then Athas scheduled then his match.
Hopefully, you're gonna
Here's
get
hoping.
the big 6-0. You're gonna get the big 6-0 because it's your birthday. That's how it's gonna go.
We hope so. Lid unfortunately scheduled his match for Friday, but whatever. I can handle that. It's just gonna be. I'm very excited, and I really hope my team can give me the W for my 22nd birthday. So.
All right. Well, I'll give you a
be
happy early
really nice.
birthday for that as well.
I appreciate it. As long as I don't have to play a match on my birthday like I had to last year for NFEPL.
Oh no!
That's a good thing.
Oh, that
I had to play CAPPL on my birthday for NFEPL, and it was not a good fight.
Ooh.
It was not a good fight, but I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
But yeah, it'll be. I think this week is gonna be really fun. I'm really excited to see what other teams cook up, and I think this is gonna be really, really exciting.
All right, and I would be inclined to agree.
All right, perfect. Well, I think that's gonna wrap up another exciting episode of PodCAP. Thanks again to Luke for joining me today.
Happy to be here. Happy you could have me.
Yeah. And if you enjoyed this video, this PodCAP again, let me know down in the comments. If you have anything that you want to hear about, any people you want me to interview / discuss all things Cap with, let me know in the comments. If you like the video, subscribe, follow me for more. Join the Cap Discord server, join the Cap process on Smogon. We'll be starting up a new process soon-ish. There's plenty to discuss with policy that we're dealing with right now, but that's a topic for another PodCAP. I've been Voltage, joined by LucarioofLegends. Thanks again, and until next time, don't forget to not miss your focus blasts. Until then.
All right.